What do WhatsApp, Instagram, and Airbnb have in common? Well, they all started out as side hustles, and that is one of the big topics in today's conversation. We are meeting with Sara, who works as an investment analyst in the investment management industry in the UK, but is also the founder of an international wine trading company. Sara shares with us all about her areas of expertise, her career journey, and she has some great advice for us too. We also talk about why reviewing progress is critical for continuous improvement. We talk about navigating life transitions, whether that be from employee to entrepreneurship or moving country. We talk about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, the power of sustainability and AI in business. And of course, we talk about side hustles and why embracing our multifaceted natures is a good thing and why companies should welcome this rising trend. So if that sounds good to you, fantastic. Sara and I will see you in the show. Enjoy. Hello, Sara. Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jo, for having me here. It's a pleasure to speak to you today.
Wonderful. Well, how about we get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Okay, so my name is Sara Danese. I'm Italian originally, but I lived in London for 12 years now, so a long time. My background is in economics and finance. I studied that, and then I joined a company called Russell Investment, where we both met. And after a few years at the company working as a portfolio analyst, I decided to leave and start my own business in the wine industry, which seems completely mad and irrational, but and perhaps it was. And then, so I have been doing that, working in wine for the last 5 years. And I recently joined the finance industry again. So my career is not as straightforward as some other people you might be interviewing is.
Brilliant. Well, I'm really excited to learn more, especially as I think typically people might do one of many things these days. And we hear a lot of talk about side hustles and other businesses and so on. So I'm really, really excited to learn more. But first of all, this is a podcast, Sara. So tell us what podcasts you enjoy listening to and whether you have any recommendations for the audience.
So, I'm more of an audiobook, I'm afraid, kind of person, but I do listen to a few podcasts. One is for those interested in wine. I don't know. There's a podcast called The Wine Conversation, and it's hosted by a master of wine, which is one of the top education in the wine business, and only a few hundred people are a master of wine, so that's very interesting. And then for finance, on the other hand, I normally listen to the Bloomberg Marine Talks Money, so that's very good. They have broad range topics, and I find that quite interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. And what's your favourite audio book that you've been listening to recently?
I'm recently, I just started listening to an audiobook called Traction, and it's written by the founder of DuckDuckGo. You know, the browser that keeps the anonymity, or so it talks about how to build traction for your business and what does it mean. So I'm at the beginning, but it seems quite interesting.
Yeah, I've read that book. And actually, one of my other friends who is starting a side business, or she's up and running now, she recommended that book to me. So yeah, highly recommend. It's a great book.
Oh
Yeah.
wow, that's that's good. That's good. Yeah, so many other audiobooks changed my life really, because you just put it on and then do other stuff at the same time, and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so, yeah. I like you say, I think the number of books that I'm reading now compared to pre-audio books, it's about 10x, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Sara, there are so many misconceptions about the work we do. And so I'd love it if you could share some of the misconceptions about your work. What do people think you're doing all day, for example?
Well, so for the finance part, I think it was really hard to explain to my family what I used to do. You know, it's like, what is an analyst? What do you do? And I think my dad came up with a really good metaphor. Which is essentially money arrives and I shovel it, and we shovel it one way or the other, you know, into piles, you know. And so I suppose that's very, you know, a down to earth way to see what we do. You know, we just have money from, you know, various pension funds, and then we need to reinvest and put into piles that make sense hopefully. But on the other hand, for the commerce side, for the wine commerce, it's much more easy to understand, so there's not much misconception there, so it's very easy, and wine is widely understood and widely drunk. So people understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I usually ask our guests to give an industry overview, and so I'll leave it up to you as to which industry you choose, commerce or finance.
Okay, so yeah, well, I started in asset management. So as I said, in asset management, we have pension funds, or you know, people, or big funds that have money from, you know, to invest on behalf of somebody, and they go and trying to find someone to trustworthy and good, hopefully with skills to invest it. So that's asset management. Whilst wine is completely different, and wine is a, you know, something that everybody drinks. It's a more it's something that it sits on the table of most people, and so it's a commerce business. So you know, taking wine from one side of the world and selling it somewhere else. But recently I've started this blog because I thought there's a lot of people that actually invest in wine, in fine wine, and so I found a way to to merge the two. So I kind of write a little bit about the both of them. So how to invest in fine wine, how to treat wine as an asset class, or, you know, how you would go about and think about stocks, or, you know, bonds and things like that. So it's been quite fun, but, you know, very you know, because a lot of people do it, you know, as a side thing, you know, because they're passionate about wine. And but yeah, I thought it would be interesting to treat him more as a financial analyst, I suppose.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I think that wine is one of those items that are almost collectible, like art, right? Is that the? Yeah. Am I understanding it correctly?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, I think they say 90% of wine is to be drunk immediately, and 2% of wine produced is actually has this value because of some properties that makes it collectible and able to age and stand the test of time. Actually gets better with time. So so we're looking at just that 2% of wines, but it's super interesting, and understanding which wine can age, and it's very, very fascinating.
Yeah, because I have to say I wouldn't know where to start. So zooming in on an average day or week, what might we find you doing in each of these roles?
So I think at the moment, working in investment, it's a normal day of work, and most of the time you are dealing with client requests and trying to build a picture of the investment that you do, trying to do analysis on past investments and explain that to clients and produce analysis that supports that, but also always be vigilant on future ideas and new ideas to come up, to be on top of the markets and how they're moving, and so it's varied. There's not one day that it's identical to the previous one, but yeah, it's very interesting if you're interested in the broader economic environment and how it affects asset classes. So that's very interesting. Well, so wine business, it's kind of occupy less of my time, much less these days, because it's all set up and running, and we set up an e-commerce business, so the day-to-day doesn't take much time from my side. It's more my team that works on it, but yes, so the majority of time is spent in the finance part these days.
I'm really curious to understand what goes into setting up an e-commerce business, because I have heard of things like Shopify, and I've heard of things like drop shipping, and it could be both of those or none of those. And so, it would be really helpful if you could share a bit more about that.
Yeah, so setting up an e-commerce business is it's easy and difficult at the same time, in a sense that I think I picked a market that was incredibly difficult, which is China, because of language barriers and social media are completely different, and but it's difficult in terms of exporting. So you need to select the products that you have and then have them in China. You can't just I know a lot of people are doing drop shipping with the US, but I think that's only if you have already a setup. Whilst selling wine to China, it's a bit slightly complicated. Also, the nature of the product, which is alcohol, very regulated, and so the wine needs to be in China, needs to go through. But very simply, you need to have a supplier in Europe, let's say, find a warehouse where to store your goods, ship those goods to China, and then set up a shop on. We have three shops, one on platform equivalent to the Amazon and etc. And then you need to do online marketing on social media and with influencers and things like that, or on offline events, where you let people taste the wine and things like that. But this is broad strokes. I don't know if you say that. what it entails.
Well, that's really interesting, and I think what I hear there is that it's a big investment of time in terms of the setup, but once you have all the pieces in place, things can run pretty smoothly without you being there. Hence, you're able to do your investment analyst work as well.
Exactly. So at the beginning, it took a lot of time because you have to build that base of kind of followers and clients that trust you, and events and actually the operational parts, which I left to some other to one of my co-founders because I'm not very an operational person, but yes, so you need to have someone that sets up all the the back end of the warehousing and things like that. But once that's done, it's very mechanical in a way. So yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, thank you. Well, we're going to get into the why you got into this a little later, and I'm looking forward to that. But for now, in the investment analyst role, can you give us a flavour of the types of tools that you're using and programs and software? That might be helpful.
Yeah, so I'm sure that everybody knows Excel is a must, but I'm not saying anything too special there. But for example, I find that especially in asset management, there are two systems that are very powerful, which one is called FactSet and the other one is Bloomberg. And I think especially if you're starting your career in a finance role, I would advise to get to know them very, very well, and schedule as many training sessions as possible, because it's one of those systems that you have limited access unless you have access it through your work. And so once you do an internship, for example, and you have access to these kind of systems, to take full advantage of the resources and trying to learn it as much as possible, because it will set you apart from in future roles. And in fact, I got this role because of I knew how to use FactSet, for example, and that was something that not a lot of people may know how to use. So yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So I guess zooming out a little bit, and again, I'll leave it to you to tell us about each role, but what might we find you doing less frequently throughout the year that we might want to know about?
I don't know, less frequently. I suppose something that I love doing, which is kind of sit down and assess from a top down level, I suppose. Things things that you have done, that I have achieved, or and how do they compare to what I know it sounds very HR in the way I'm saying it, but especially when you have your own business, you at the beginning of the year you set up a plan, and then 6 months in you must go back and look at it and say, no, that didn't go very well, or yes, this went very well, and how can we improve on it? And a lot of things that I thought that they were just a shot in the dark turned out to be really good things, and other things that I thought, oh my god, this is gonna work, didn't. So I think I like to do that. I like to take a week to do that, and think about what's going on, and that can be applied in finance as well. Maybe at the beginning of the year you have an idea where you want to go, and then you get lost on the day-to-day things. But it's nice to take to look at what you've done, and where you can add more value, and yes.
It's that classic I guess strategy piece that you might do at the beginning of the year, isn't it? What are our goals for this year, and how are we going to achieve them, and how will we know if we've achieved them? And then when the year comes to an end, you're probably going to be checking throughout, but how are we making progress towards those goals? And like you say, it the reflection piece afterwards, what went well, what could be better, what would we do differently next time. And I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think when you've gone from a corporate structure where all of that is in place, whether that be the leader of your team with business objectives, or your direct manager with things like the performance development
reviews,
appraisal system that goes on. And that's all set up for you. And of course, when you're working for yourself, you don't really have that. And it can be very easy to, do things on I've heard it called a wing and a prayer, but actually it is best to be a bit more structured about it. And the other thing that I found interesting, and people I know have found this interesting too, is when you're working for yourself, you don't have anybody to say, hey, you're doing a great job, keep on doing it. Or, hey, you might want to think about doing this slightly different. And so you've got to really be very self-aware and do that reflection piece yourself. So, very different.
Yeah, and it's also a time to connect with your colleagues, as well. When you have a small team, just think about what you've done the whole year, and but yes, it's very true. In a small setting, a lot of these big corporations, setups, they don't exist, and you need to build them, and you only realize that they're nice only when they're gone.
Yeah. Tell us what you love most about the two roles.
So, they're very different, right? So, some people say, some people say, to be a financial analyst, you might be, be more an introvert, and like numbers and these kind of things, whilst to be an entrepreneur you might need the opposite skills, right? You need to be out there talking about your business. But I think of both, what I like is the fact that you get to know the world around you in a way. Like for me, finance is very much, it's about discovery, of trying to understand the world around us a little bit better. And I suppose selling wine, it's another piece of the puzzle, a more a completely different, maybe different puzzle, but still kind of it's very interesting to see how the world of commerce works, and trying to understand what are the dynamics that are there, and what it's the impact of certain economic and political situations and effects, that how that affects commerce and selling wine, and wine itself. And so I like that. But I think generally I kind of like multiple things. I don't know, there's this misconception that a person has one career, and people assume that when I left finance, I didn't like finance, and that's completely not true. I don't know if you notice the blue plaques. Sometimes you see, this person was, a poet, a pharmacist, and I find that's really interesting, and I think perhaps I'm a person like that has more interests than just one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that our careers don't define us. And you're right, we're not just one person. We can be a multitude of things, and we can have a multitude of interests and skills and passions. And I think if you have the opportunities to explore those, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think also in Italy, our education system is slightly different. We have this kind of baccalaureate type of thing where you have to study a broad number of subjects, and all of the subjects, right, until you're 19, and then you go to university. And when I had to choose university, for me it was very difficult because I like so many things, and I thought in the end I chose economics because I thought that would give me the ability to, it would be the most the thing I could use in multiple areas, however I wanted, the degree that would allow me. If I chose to become a doctor, you're kind of stuck in that, I suppose, more or less. I met a lot of entrepreneurs coming from a medical background, but I thought that was very, very difficult for me to choose university.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Tell us about the most challenging parts of the work that you're doing. And I'm guessing the juggle might be one of them, but you tell me.
Yeah, I think juggling, it's hard. But I generally think that being an entrepreneur, having your own business, is not for the faint of heart. I think whilst in a finance career, I find that you have peaks and trough and lows, let's say. But they're much more muted. When you're an entrepreneur, you might have, higher peaks, but very much the lows are much more pronounced, and they have a bigger impact. And I suppose you as a person have a bigger impact in a smaller organization than you have in a bigger corporation. So that feels quite a lot more, because it is more personal, right? And so the fact that it is a more personal journey, that's the most difficult part. But
And how do you manage those lows and bounce back from them?
I don't know. Good question. No, I just think you just carry on. I think that's it. At the beginning, it's very hard. The first year or so, I think it's the hardest of all, because you come from a very big environment, and then all of a sudden you have to build everything from scratch. And a lot of people, because you don't have the track record, might be more skeptical, and so you go into business meetings and like, who are you? So at the very beginning, but I think I made a rule of saying, even when you don't feel like it, you just get on with it. And then if it goes bad, fine, you try again tomorrow, and then the day after. And I think it's just I don't know, a mindset. You need to be consciously persistent, and don't let little things get to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you consider the work and the work you've done so far, what makes you most proud?
I think building something from zero to one. There's that book, Going from Zero to One. I think that's very gives you a lot of pride. But then
is that the eBay guy?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I read it so long ago that, but yeah, the book is 0 to 1.
Is it Peter?
You have that.
Peter Thiel, maybe. Yeah, we've clearly read the same books.
Yeah, exactly. Or listen to them.
Yeah.
But yes, I think seeing your idea materialize, I think that's what that gives you the greatest pride, I think, of all. I don't care for any recognition or anything. I think the work and having pride in what you do, what you put out in the world, I think that's what makes me the most entertained, I suppose, and happy, and yeah.
All right, thank you. So I want to take us all the way back to the beginning. When you were, when you were at school, when you were a kid, what were you thinking you might like to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a volleyball player.
Did you?
Yes, I wanted to be a sports person. Yeah. And I did, but not very successfully. So I used to play volleyball. It's big in Italy. I know here it's just started with the 2012 Olympics. Some interest started. But yeah, so I played volleyball until I was in my 20s. Then I stopped.
Oh wow!
I think it was a great way to learn a lot of lessons. I loved it. I thought it was great, and so everything else was kind of secondary, for me.
And at what point did you realise that might not be your career, and how did you come to that decision?
Well, so I was always, very driven. So I always did quite well in school. But, when I went to university and my knees broke, and, I thought I need to stop playing volleyball. And I kind of stopped in my second year of uni. And then I came to London to try and learn English because so during my second year, I spent 3 months here and then went back to do my exams and my final year, and then I came back here. But it was at that point, even the university I chose was kind of driven by the fact that I found a team there in that city, and so
Oh. So you did economics at uni, and as part of that degree course, you came over to London to learn English for part of the course. Is that right?
No, not as part of the course. As just I quit volleyball, and then I was like, I really want to learn English, and so I kind of didn't attend any classes in my the second term of my second year, and then just showed up at the exams and after. But yeah, it wasn't part of my course. I just went and I worked as a waitress, which was quite fun. Very long hours. I thought it was a great experience. And then, to be honest, I liked London so much, I wanted to come back after university.
Yeah. And of course, we're not promoting not going to lectures to anyone that's listening.
No, exactly. Of course not. It was very hard to then catch up with all the exams, to be honest, especially because, when you work in a restaurant in London, they work you hard, and, I had like 12-hour shifts, and, it wasn't a piece of cake then going back. But it was fun.
All right. So you graduated with your economics degree, and then you came to London. What happened next?
So for a year or so, for a year and a half, I worked for a startup in finance, which essentially Yeah, we were dealing with a lot of the regulation that was coming up. So I had a more kind of less analytical and more you would call it client relationship role, which was
Yeah.
great for my English.
Yeah.
I had to phone a lot of the clients and let them know that this regulation was coming, and regulation is not very well received by Americans, which
Yeah.
was the bulk of the clients, and so we would get a lot
Yeah.
of interesting answers. So it was it was a fun job, and then I did a master's at Imperial College in risk management and financial engineering, and after that
Yeah.
I joined Russell. So yeah, and during my time at
Yeah.
Russell, I studied for the CFA, the infamous CFA, no, famous,
Yeah.
infamous CFA. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess at what point in this part of the journey did you start to feel like, I've done economics at uni, I've arrived in financial services, but actually I really like this. This is feels good to me.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I just like well, from immediately, even in my previous job, even if the very first job I had was completely different from, it was more client relations. I
Yeah.
thought it was very interesting, and yeah, from the beginning, I think I kind of got on with the team. It was a small team. It was a so I think as long as you have a good set of people around you, the job is slightly secondary. I'm not saying it's secondary, but I found it that when I then joined Russell Investment, I thought, oh yeah, this is great. This is the job I liked more than before. But I
Yeah.
think generally there are a lot of opportunity in the finance world for various different type of people and individuals and personalities, I suppose, and I think
Yeah.
it's a very diverse environment.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was behind your decision to do the masters at Imperial?
The masters was like in Italy. You kind of do the 5 years of university. So the fact that I didn't do
Yeah.
it, I always thought I will do a master's, but I want to
Yeah.
do it in England, so at least it's recognized. So I had that idea, and to be honest, I had an offer from Imperial, when immediately when I arrived, but because I had found the job, I asked to be delayed
Yeah.
by a year, so it was
Yeah.
quite nice. I worked for a year and a
Yeah.
half in the startup, and then I went to Imperial, and Imperial was very hard. You couldn't miss a term to go abroad for that degree. So I found it very hard. I don't know if because I left a gap between the two degrees, and my brain kind of but I thought it was very quantitative, a lot of very
Yeah.
driven people, and because the grades are also awarded in a normal distribution, so that was
Yeah.
very intense 1 year. I know
Yeah.
a lot of masters, sometimes you have 2 years and maybe you have more time to
Yeah.
breathe, but it was a very intense course but very rewarding,
Yeah.
I suppose.
And I'm curious just at this point to understand how you found transitioning from Italy to London when English wasn't your first language, and you knew you had to practice those skills.
So yeah, at the beginning in my it was difficult. Your language skills are not very very good, but I think and that's why I think the job as a more client focus really helped me to kind of hone those skills, and the job as a waitress also helped me to hone those skills. No, but it was quite hard at the beginning because of English culture, especially. Is full of subtleties in the language, especially, and that was really hard. And I think for that, I'm still learning, to understand the English culture, and what. When somebody says something and it means something else, the culture shock was the biggest barrier, I think.
Yeah. And have you had the opportunity to use your Italian in any of the finance roles?
Actually, a little bit in my first job, because it was more client driven. So they would assign me some clients that were Italian speaking. And to a very small extent in my job at Russell, yes, because sometimes we had clients over that were Italians, but not massively. I expected, maybe because not many people speak. We're only a tiny nation, so not many people speak Italian. But of course, in my wine job, a lot. That's a good skill to have in an industry where Italy is one of the top 3 producers in the world. So that's where really it helped.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So tell us about the opportunity at Russell, which team you were in, what you were doing.
So at Russell, I worked in a team called multi-strategy team. So what we would do is some big pension funds from all over the world would need to invest this money that they would get as part of a pension scheme for their employees, and we would ask to run a customized, what's called a customized segregated account, a customized portfolio essentially. They would have certain parameters that we would need to meet, and then run the portfolio in a measured way to preserve that capital. That it's really important. It's a really important function, because if you think that that money is for retirement, it gives you kind of, if you step back and think of that, it gives you an idea of how crucial it is that you are you're very measured with what you do with that money, and how you invest it, and how important is your role for a lot of people after retirement, after working for 50 or odd years. And then we would run it. It was called multi-strategy because we would mainly invest in equities, funds, but also sometimes we do also invest in fixed income, so-called fixed income funds, or other asset classes, but mainly equity. So it was run as a fund of funds. So we would invest in other fund managers, and by aggregating we would bring certain characteristics of the fund in a way to create a risk profile that was lower than the sum of the funds that we invest in.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And how long were you in that role? And part B, at what point did you start thinking about your potential entrepreneurial journey?
I was there for 4 years, and I think it's because, I mentioned in passing the CFA. I'd got my CFA and I felt this sense of freedom. So because after 3 years of spending, the whole of May studying for it, now I had time, so I think my mind started to wander after the CFA was finished, and I wanted to do something else. Also, I was it was just before my 30s, and they say that before you change decade, I think you do crazier things. I don't know if that's true, but it was definitely true for me. So I wanted to explore. I was very fascinated with China. I thought it was a market that, from what we hear here, a market full of, what we hear is maybe a lot of it is stereotypical and, not very, not very informed. And I wanted to see it for myself, and I had this urge to explore it a little bit more, and then that's what I did. I went to China, and and then I started a business. That's what happened.
And how was the transition from being an employee to being to starting the business? Did you do both for part of the time, or did you kind of go from one to the other?
Yeah, I think I went straight one to the other, but I think the very first period for me, I think probably the first 6 months were kind of research. So I went to China. I went to China. I went to travel around Europe to find some wines, so it was kind of an exploration. For the first time, I kind of had time to, just explore what was going on without, any pressure. And so the first period was very much like this. And then it happens because you are more open to ideas that we found a partner in China. And so that kind of kicked off things quite quickly. So we needed to find really seriously wine, and and then everything kind of started to fall into place.
Yeah. And I'm really curious, what came first? The interest in China, you thinking, right, I'm going to set up a business, and then it being a wine business. Tell us how that happened.
I don't know. I genuinely don't have an answer to that. And in fact, I had an interest in wine, of course, always had. And also I come from a region in Italy where wine is kind of, one of the biggest, businesses there. Verona, which is, if you have a chance, of course, go and visit there. So for me, kind of, I always had an interest in that. I knew a few people that sold wine, and always talks about China as a, kind of a big opportunity, but a very difficult opportunity to kind of get into. And I had this interest in China that I wanted to explore. So I went there and tried to speak to as many kind of wine importers that I could. But even that was very hard because, the way business works is very different. From finance, but also from the West, emails, I would email people to try and have a meeting with them ahead of me going there. But no one uses emails. Everyone uses WeChat. So it was pretty useless. It started a little bit by chance, really. I thought that these two markets are big opportunities, and I had an interest in the wine markets. And I don't have a better answer. I should have had a better story, but I'm afraid that this is it.
No. Well, it just feels very real. And I don't know if you've read the book by, I can't remember his first name, Phil Knight, the Shoe Dog book.
Yes, I did.
So the Knight founder, and actually it's reminding me of those trips he talks about to, I think it was China, where he was getting the trainers made and going to the factories and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly. It's very random. You show up there, and then China is a big step, like, especially if you go without knowing Chinese, which I didn't. You step into China and none of your apps work. So, your Google Maps to find food, for example, things that are very basic things, stop working. And, of course, at first to communicate with people was really hard because maybe, in industries such as finance, you go and meet people in finance in Shanghai and they all speak, of course, English. But if you go where I went first, Guangzhou, which is in the south of China near Hong Kong, no one speaks, very few people speak English. And so we would use, like this instantaneous translator that would completely translate. Very ludicrous translations, and so it was quite interesting. I enjoyed it a lot, but very difficult. And but yes, but both interesting and difficult. And so I don't know, maybe I like difficult things. I don't know.
And I guess in that, I don't know, first 6 months of, leaving the safety of corporate life and employment and going it alone, were there any points in that first 6 months where you thought, oh my goodness, what on earth am I doing? Should I go back to finance now?
Well, the first month I didn't receive my paycheck. That was like, oh my God, what have I done? That's hits quite quickly. But yes, because you of course you're trying to prepare yourself to the fact that you're not receiving a stable income. But it never, it's hard, right? When you have, when you've been working, it's a comfort. It's a comfort to have like a paycheck. And, in finance, people that work in finance, we're very fortunate that it's, kind of, good, and, and you rely upon it. And then that, the rug is pulled under your feet and you're like, what have I done? Why did I do this? But yes, I think it's all part of the learning curve.
Yeah. And I'm really curious about what friends and family were saying at the time, and even colleagues. Were they supportive, or did you get some sort of pushback or nervousness from them?
I think my family is used to me doing weird stuff, that they can't understand. But yes, my dad, of course, was like, why are you doing this? You finally got a job that, pays well. Why would you, why would you leave it? And, a lot of people that perhaps value comfort. But a lot of people, I actually thought that more people were encouraging, like a lot, especially maybe because I was, I don't know, I was in my late 20s. And so a lot of people thought, it's time for you to come back. Don't worry about it. But maybe if I did that later on, the pushback would have been, the negative comments would have been, more than what I received. But overall, I think I kind of had a lot of very supportive, people around me, and that were excited about what I was doing, and always wanted to keep for them, to ask me what's going on, tell us about it. So I think overall positive.
Yeah, well, that's good. So I'm not going to ask you in granular detail how you built a business in China, because I know that it would be very complex and probably be more of a podcast series than an episode. So what I'd like you to do is tell us about when you got to that stage when you thought, yeah, this is working. I'm so glad I took this leap. Tell us about that moment.
I think you never get to that stage. I don't know. Because you always want, I don't know, when you're building a business, I think you always want, to grow, right? That's the definition of a startup, right? You always want to grow. So there's always kind of difficulties and things like that. But I think there was a point during the pandemic for us. When the pandemic broke out, I thought, that's it. We need to shut down everything, and because we thought it would be a disaster for us. It didn't click that we were an e-commerce business. Of course, people would order, but for us, actually, the pandemic kind of helped us completely. Reduce the unnecessary expenses, and laser focus on what was our core business, and then it kind of exploded in that month. I think from mid-March to 2020 onwards for us was very good. So it's like, what? Because we had suddenly no expenses for for an office. We didn't have any expenses to travel to China. We didn't, because everybody was working from home, so all the expenses were reduced, and so I thought that was a pivotal moment in our business.
Wow. Okay, so you don't get to that point. Okay, noted.
I'm sure. I'm sure for you it's going to be very different, and you're gonna. In that book, Traction, they said. I think the author was saying that you need to. That founders give up too quickly, and that I think you need to account for a startup to take 10 years before it works. So maybe I haven't reached that 10 years. I don't know, but I don't know. So, sorry.
Keep the faith. Okay. I'm really curious. I think you said are you 5 years into the business now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
yes.
And have you always held the same role within the business, or have you found that the activities you're doing day to day have evolved over that time?
Well, same role, like when you're one of the founders, you always kind of have to do everything. So whatever needs doing, the most terrible job that needs to be done, it's yours. No, but jokes aside, I think you have to do pretty much everything in a small when you're the founder of a small business. So the role has evolved a little bit, as I was saying. At the beginning, when you're building, it's much more hands-on and trying to discover, and whilst when you are kind of trying to replicate it, the role is completely different. So at the beginning was much more hands-on and much more out there talking about it and trying to raise funding, etc. So yeah.
And as well as your partners and suppliers, do you employ staff now?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we employ staff, but staff is a little bit here, a little bit in China. It's very that's very interesting. We work also with university, with Imperial College, and with grads from Goldsmith, which is a university near where I live, that has a lot of art students and marketing students, which is a lot of skills that we require. So it's interesting to work, and it's always for us always great to get an injection of new blood, let's say, because it's the newer generation know a lot more about social media than I do, and it's very great for me to hear new ideas and new perspectives, and so I think that's one of the best parts, especially during the summer now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned funding. Did you go to get private equity funding, or was it a different type of funding?
Yeah, we raise what was called not private equity, but we raise a pre-seed round of funding, we called it.
Fantastic.
At the very beginning, and we haven't. The reason why we thought we were kind of dead in the water during the pandemic is because we wanted to raise further funding, but in the end we decided not to, and so we kind of decided to do to kind of see if this model revenue, because we had we cut all these expenses, we were able to reinvest the proceeds of our revenues and be more mindful with the funds that we had.
All right, thank you. And I guess before we move on to the next topic, I'm wondering if you might share with us perhaps the top 3 lessons that you might want to share with aspiring entrepreneurs out there. What are the 3 big lessons you've learned from this process?
Well, the first one I think I touched before, and it's it's persistence. Like I genuinely think that's a big a big shock, because no one owes you anything, so so you need to go out there, and people are going to be rude, and people are going to be and every time you just need to go and try one way and try another way, and if that way doesn't work, try another way. Every day you're trying something that's not working, so you need to have that persistence, that persistence. You can't let go of it, but I think it's very tiring, so be prepared for that, because it's going to require a lot of effort. And the second thing about that is that I think you need to be prepared to do pretty much everything. You can't go into a small business, a small business or a startup, without thinking that you will have to do everything, and ultimately you're the sole person responsible. So no one's going to check up on you, and no one is. So you need to have that self-discipline, and you need to be willing to just get things done. For me, the bureaucracy is a big thing that I hate doing, but I have to deal with it in some way. And I'm trying to minimize it, but it's something that you need to do, and that self-discipline to keep on doing everything kind of needs to happen. And then third lesson, I think it's when I went into, you hear these stories about startups becoming super successful overnight, and the Facebook and the Google of this world, and of course it's great, and and they're founded by really young people, and these kind of stories that I'm sure make good stories for magazine and for selling magazine and news articles, etc. But I think maybe like in the book that we were discussing, it takes a long time to build a business, and I think you need to be passionate about what you do and find it interesting, because it's not going to happen overnight, and you're going to have to read a lot, you're going to have to think about the problems that you're facing a lot, it's not easy. So I think that's important to keep in mind. But I think it's a positive message in a sense. Is like, you don't need to, it's not just the Facebook and the Google of this world that, or the unicorns, let's say. You can just build a really good business, and, but it takes time and effort, and
great advice. Thank you very much. Okay, and so I guess to bring us up to speed with where you are now, what led you to the decision to come back to finance in some capacity?
Well, honestly, because I think that my time spent on the business wasn't requiring my as much of my time as it did at the beginning. So I felt that I could go back to finance, and it's something that I've always been passionate about, and so so that was one of the reasons why I went back to it. And I think it's very interesting, the adjustment to the culture in finance back from a small environment where you make the decisions, and now back to big corporation, and it's it's another culture shock.
Yeah. I think they call it a portfolio career when you have a few different things going on, and that sounds a bit like what you have going on. And I think what's nice about that is you get to refresh your finance skills if they need refreshing, and you can now do both at the same time. So that's brilliant. Yeah,
exactly. And I think younger generations as well, like I feel like a lot of the younger generation coming through, there is more this mentality of side hustles, if you want to call it that, or more and I generally believe that that's going to be more and more popular as people as some of the jobs that we're doing will be taken up by AI and all these new technologies, and I think as people and younger generation want to build something on their own, but need to explore what they like, and that takes time, and you might not have the financial resources to take the jump immediately, and I think running two things at the same time doesn't necessarily mean that your attention is split, and well, it might do, but I think it's something that's going to become more and more popular or frequent, and I think perhaps companies will need to think about this, and how to integrate that, and I think that's a trend that we'll see more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can only be I can see that some companies might not be super happy about it if, like you say, they think the attention is going to be split. But actually, if you're managing it in such a way that you can still give 100% to your day job, say, then I actually think it makes for a better employee, because it demonstrates your curiosity, that you've got passion outside of work, that you are somebody who is, a go-getter who wants to get up and do things. And I think those are qualities that I think any business would love to have.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a conflict of interest, or there might be, and that needs to be discussed with the employer beforehand. But if there isn't, and it's a bit like a hobby, right? It's someone that likes to do triathlons. I don't know who these people are, but I hear some people do, and that requires a lot of effort and training, and in the same way that perhaps a side hustle would.
Yeah, great point. Thank you. Okay, so when you look back at your career journey so far, what are you going to call out as the high of that journey?
Well, I don't know. Well, as I said, building something from scratch. I think that's great. That's great. But I think when something that made me very proud, or made me take a step back and think, it's when I was raising seed funds, and some of the people, you reach into your network first, and and some people decided to invest, and of course we only had an idea, and I think that was very brave first of all, and but I thought it was great that some people decided to invest in me, in us, in what I was doing, because I thought I felt very honored to have that backing, that you might not receive otherwise, and and I thought that was a highlight, and for me certainly.
Yeah, absolutely, because it shows that they have faith in the vision and you, doesn't it? It's almost like a rubber stamp of approval, and I can imagine that helped through some of those low moments, knowing that you had that backing and support. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. I think especially knowing that you have people that you trust on your side, right? It's always great, and
yeah. Okay. So again, looking back on the career journey so far, what's the biggest challenge or failure, or perhaps a limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
Yes, many. Yes, I think many. I think when you're an entrepreneur, I think they all relate to money.
Yeah.
Because I think you're much more aware of um, what to invest, and you need to make critical
Yeah.
decisions, right? Invest in this versus that, and then that everything stops. If you don't make the right decision, that has repercussion not just for you, but
Yeah.
for other people and for the whole business. So I think what I thought was the most challenging thing was deal with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think all the challenges were that, because I think everything else was like a minor challenge in a sense.
Yeah.
It was someone saying no to this, or it's a kind of a disappointment, but it's
Yeah.
but I think all the challenges more related to financing were the
Yeah.
biggest ones that an entrepreneur will have to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm just picturing Maslow's hierarchy of needs there, because it relates to, doesn't it? Being able to
Yes.
eat, have a roof over your head. It's those basic needs that have to be met. And if you don't have money, you can't meet those needs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and maybe because I come from a financial background, having that, always you have that ingrained in your mindset. So I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe other people take
Yeah.
take those matters slightly less at heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm really curious about the role of mentors and sponsors and role models on your career journey, and maybe, how that's helped you through this transition.
I think role models and and mentors, they come in various different shapes and forms, right? For me, perhaps because I'm driven, I really like to have kind of mentors that are more subtle about it, like, and I definitely had um you know uh, role models that were more like a sounding board for my ideas, so that
Yeah.
they were like, yeah, but have you thought about this, rather than kind of directing you. And it's very important that you try and build those connections, and even though sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard and it's intimidating to try and but I was lucky in a sense that I worked in a small team, and so
Yeah.
I had access to more senior people in my team, and I was able to have that kind of mentoring, I suppose,
Yeah.
which if instead you are one of these organizations that have the person more senior to you is essentially a couple of years older than you might find it harder
Yeah.
to then reach to the following step.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was great the way it was set up to access that. But then when you become an entrepreneur, I think that kind of security kind of collapses, and you are faced with the fact that you also need to go out and create those
Yeah.
connections and create that network and be proactive in creating that network. So I think I attended a lot of before COVID, I attended a
Yeah.
lot of kind of entrepreneurs
Yeah.
network events, and I think it helps a lot to share the
Yeah.
burden with other people, discuss things, and get to know what they're doing and what their struggles, and that very much their struggle is your struggle.
Yeah.
So I think once you're on your own, you need to be more
Yeah.
more proactive in asking for that kind of mentoring. And I
Yeah.
suppose, it's before it was more, passive. I received it and I didn't know how lucky that was.
Yeah. 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 I think it's a great point, isn't it? I have a couple of friends who we almost do accountability catch-ups with.
Yes.
Some monthly, but I have one that's weekly, and we have it on a Friday lunchtime. And so it's quite nice because it's like an end of week check-in that's, fun as well as work, but it just feels nice to know that at the end of the week I've always got that check-in with somebody who's on a similar journey, which I really like.
That's a great idea. I never thought about that, but yeah, it's definitely. I'm sure you feel so much more. Working on your own, it's really hard, and you're all in smaller teams,
Yeah.
and and having someone to check up on you and to share things with. I think it's great.
Yeah. All right. So for somebody thinking they might want to get into finance or they might want to pursue entrepreneurship, what advice would you give them with regards to, I guess, education, qualifications, training first, and then we'll move on to soft skills?
Okay. So, well, finance is very, kind of, very traditional in a sense, but of course it's for a reason. It's because when you get into finance, you're managing money for other people, and so you need to have a certain set of education, that you need to tick certain boxes, which I think on one side it's actually because you need to have certain qualifications, meet certain minimum requirements that to manage other people's money, and to have the retirement funds in your hands. But so for that, I think my career, my education path is very standard, right? Educated in economics, and then go study finance as a master, and then study CFA. Very, very, very standard. I think you couldn't get more standard than that. But I think in the UK they're more open also now to other degrees, for example, and because that brings different point of views. But I work with a lot of people that have more science related degrees, so maths and and this kind of data, statistics, this kind of things, not necessarily economics or finance related. But there are a lot of analysts that has studied more literary degrees, so like English or law, and then decided that to enter into a program, and it's more likely that these kind of people will get hired in bigger companies that have certain policies, and they know that they have a standardized training after they join. And whilst if perhaps want to join a smaller company, it's harder with less standardized degrees. I don't know if I think you're the you're the expert here.
I think if you want to go into the team that's managing money, of course, numeracy is going to be key, and that you're able to pass those qualifications that you need to manage money. But I know of some great examples where some people have come in through different roads, and I'm thinking of somebody who is at my previous organisation. I'm pretty sure she was the head of fixed income, and she had an English degree. And so
Oh, wow.
what I like about that is that it does I guess broaden the opportunity for more people to come in, but they have to demonstrate that numerical literacy. So I think it's changing a bit, but I think, whatever the degree, you've got to be able to have the numerical smarts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think now there's if you, for example, want to become an analyst on a specific sector, for example, I see a lot of people, for example, with a biotechnology or biology degree going into analyzing, like healthcare stocks, and because they have a much better understanding of that particular sector. In this kind of way, I think there are opportunities for other degrees to go into finance, and I think that's great. And then there are these programs such as the CFA and or even a master's. Should one wish to do a master's, to get those numerical skills that are needed. But yes, so that's for finance. For entrepreneurship, I met people from with the most, with no degree, with with degrees in pretty much everything. I think the skills required are very different, and I think we know of so many people that didn't even have a degree, and they became the founder of Microsoft. The skill set is quite different, and I think it's because of a different one is more centered around your idea, and you need to have the skills to make it, the skills and the connections to make it successful. And the other one is more like you need to meet certain criteria, a bit like a doctor needs to meet certain criteria to become a doctor, and look after patients.
Yeah. Okay. And tell us about the soft skills that you think are helpful in each of the disciplines.
So, well, for investments, I think, because it tends to be working with, bigger organizations, you need to have, soft skills are not to be underestimated. The ability to communicate effectively your ideas, it's key if you then want to progress, because it's no good if you have an idea and then you haven't made other people listen to that idea. Other people need to understand that, and so that's for example for internal purposes, but also the ability to kind of reassure clients that's very important, to make sure you communicate that what you're doing is done in a very thought after manner. So I think that those are the two important, communication skills. It's, I think, very, very important in investment, even though sometimes you have roles, a lot of people that are more numerical and will focus less on that. But I genuinely think that it's quite important to manage money, to be a good communicator. For entrepreneurship, I think you still do need to convey your idea. So you still need to sell your idea to the outside, be it your customers, be your investors. You have a lot of stakeholders, and all of them need to be convinced that what you're doing is great, and you taking decisions, and you do so in a way that it's that makes sense. Yeah, I think don't underestimate communication skills and soft skills, and that, because both are very important in both roles. They're very important.
I totally agree with you. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a myth, isn't it, that if you're in a very technical role, that's enough. But you, like you say, if you can't communicate your ideas, you're gonna have problems along the way.
Yeah. And then I think the other super important thing is that in when you become an entrepreneur and you have a team of people, the way you communicate to your team is key, right? Because you need to have confidence, but at the same time, you want you want to promote people to contribute, and you can't just be about what you think is right, because I think it's even more it has an even bigger impact when you are in a small team, that everybody contributes and everybody feels listened to. And then in a bigger company where maybe it's less crucial to the success of the business that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so tell us about the future of finance and entrepreneurship, and perhaps where people can find out more if they want to.
So, well, I have been quite impressed or shocked how much finance has gone from we don't care about sustainability to, oh my God, we can only invest in system. No, I think it's a good shift, and I think that's something that is going to continue, and I think perhaps I work for a business now that's very mindful of that, but also I saw the same trends in the wine industry. There's, aside from at the beginning, it was more of a marketing thing to be organic, or but now it's pressing the weight of the bottles, the materials that are used in the production, and the consumer really is seeking the younger consumers are seeking an approach that better for the environment. And I think there will be a shift towards that in in every sector. And then I also think it's been a lot of this AI and taking your job, and I love ChatGPT. I think I think it's great. I use it all the time. I think technology is gonna take away some of the jobs that we're doing, but I see it as a great thing, especially for people that are creative, which I think I am. I think I like thinking outside the box, and I think perhaps a lot of people that might be more processes driven, then they might find themselves, maybe not processes driven, but that feel like the job is repetitive. That's for sure is going to be challenged by the AI and other technologies. But yeah, so I think these two are the two changes that I see across both both businesses, and I think both of them are kind of the first one for sure, the sustainability for sure is going to be a force for good, but I think also the AI is going to be a force for good, freeing people of more tedious tasks and, giving the freedom to be more creative with the tools that enables them to do so.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. If people want to find out more about finance or entrepreneurship, are there any podcasts or books or websites that you might direct them to, or any other resources?
Well, I actually, for both at the moment, my biggest source of, kind of ideas and interesting things is Substack. I don't know if, that's where I host my blog essentially, but there are so many great publications and, finance also publication, because of course, you can read the Financial Times and Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal. There's not, they're the more established source of information for finance. But I think these Substack blogs are super interesting because they offer, perhaps they're not as as established and as a large newspaper, but they offer some interesting ideas, then you can go and explore. So I literally spend my time trying to find nice niche publications on Substack. They have there's so many now. A lot of people, jumped on the bandwagon of Substack, and I generally, love that. So that's currently what I do. But or audiobooks. I think, especially for entrepreneurship, I listen to a lot of books, and trying to find inspiration where I can. But also on Substack, a lot of VCs, a lot of venture capital firms would create a newsletter where they talk about various aspects. Some talks about the marketing aspect, some of them talk about, fundraising. And so, I would definitely check out Substack. It's one of my favorite places right now.
Yeah. All right. We will do that. Thank you. Okay. As we move towards wrapping up, Sara, what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were just starting out on your career journey?
For me, it's that no one has the right answer. So, perhaps at the beginning, when you start in finance, it's very intimidating, right? Because there's a lot of jargon and, and I think it can be intimidating. But what I would advise is, to kind of take it, take what you hear, but with skepticism, and also trying to, no one has the answer. Some, people build their convictions on a set of reasoning, and you can create your own set of reasoning. And I think as long as you are able to communicate it to the people eloquently, or be able to communicate that reasoning, I think that's good enough. You don't need to know to have all the answers. So I think that's what I would say.
Yeah. And what would you say to young Sara who wanted to be a volleyball player?
Don't go into sports. No. I would say, just follow what you want to do, and I think everything is going to work out. Maybe not, you're not going to become an athlete like you wanted, but something else, I'm sure. I think have the confidence of, go ahead with what you believe. is the right path for that moment.
Yeah. And I think that, listen to the call. You heard the call of entrepreneurship and you went for it. And I think that that's really courageous. And I think that, we all have those calls, don't we? And of course, we might be in situations that don't allow us to pursue them. But if you can,
Exactly.
I think, try. Yeah. Do you have any favourite quotes or mantras or inspirational sayings you'd like to share with us?
I actually, when I doom scroll on YouTube or TikTok, Morgan Freeman. I listened to Morgan Freeman reading Invictus, and I thought that was very inspirational, and I think that's something that perhaps may resonate more with the people that want to go into entrepreneurship. That's you can choose what you are the captain of your soul, and the master of your fate, right? And you can choose your what you want to do, and you don't need to be stuck in a position, in a position, in a role that doesn't quite feel right, or I think. And I think if there are challenges, you just need to take them as challenges. It's just it's just a job, and to just take them as they come, and then not be too bothered, not be too not be too bothered by them, to just take them, and tomorrow it's a new day, and then move on. And I think that's the biggest takeaway.
What's your secret to happiness and fulfillment at work?
Well, I think we keep on looking for it, right? But I think a lot of people say, to be happy, you need to love what you do, and I think for me, it's instead of loving what you do, you need to love how you do it. I feel like because I like doing so many things, but I like being, having this creative approach to all the things I do, and so I think that's the key, which I only found out after I left my finance job, and you realize exactly what you enjoyed doing, and that it wasn't the what I was doing that I didn't like. It was the approach, and I think it's about having this different approach to life, to work and life.
Yeah, thank you. Any final words of wisdom or encouragement for the audience before we wrap up?
Well, well, I think the final words of encouragement is to, if you can, to take that leap of to have that courage to do it. And I think everybody has fear, but I think the people that we see as courageous are those that even though they have fear, they still take the leap. And I think that's the important thing. Take the leap. What's going to happen? It's not going to be the end of the world. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, Sara, thank you so much for today. This has been fantastic. I'm feeling hugely inspired, and you've challenged me, because I've not had to interview a guest on 2 sets of roles before, so it was a challenge for me. But I loved it, and I've loved hearing about your entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great. I think, I'm very inspired by your leap with this podcast, and I wish you all the success in the world. And yeah.
Thank you so much for joining Sara and I today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. If you gained any value out of today's episode, please share it with your friends and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, do get in touch with us. Until next time, have a think about how you could flex that entrepreneurial muscle, or how you could channel a bit of your passion into a side hustle. After all, it could be the next WhatsApp, Instagram or Airbnb. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week.
I found my